If you feel a burning sensation climbing up your chest after dinner, there is a good chance you are making one specific mistake tonight, right before you go to sleep, and you probably have no idea you are doing it. It is not just about what you eat. It is about what you eat in the hours before you lie down, and how your body handles that food once you are horizontal. Most people think heartburn at night is random, that it just happens because the body is tired or because they ate something spicy. But the truth is more precise than that, and once you understand the mechanism, you can actually do something about it tonight. Let's start with what is actually happening inside your body when you feel that burning sensation after a meal. At the bottom of your esophagus, right where it meets your stomach, there is a ring of muscle called the lower esophageal sphincter. Think of it as a one-way door. When you swallow, it opens to let food pass into the stomach, and then it should close tightly to keep stomach acid where it belongs, inside the stomach. In people with gastroesophageal reflux disease, commonly known as GERD, that door does not close the way it should. It relaxes at the wrong times, or it does not have enough pressure to stay shut, and acid slips back up into the esophagus. That backward flow is what causes the burning you feel in your chest, sometimes reaching all the way up to your throat. During the day, gravity helps you. When you are upright, even if a small amount of acid escapes through that sphincter, gravity pulls it back down fairly quickly. But at night, when you lie flat, gravity is no longer on your side. Acid that escapes can sit in your esophagus for much longer, sometimes for hours, because there is nothing pulling it back down. This is one of the main reasons nighttime reflux tends to feel worse and last longer than reflux during the day. Research on people with frequent heartburn has consistently shown that a majority of them report that their symptoms intensify specifically at night, disrupting sleep and, over time, damaging the lining of the esophagus more than daytime episodes do. Now here is the part most people never connect to their evening routine. It is not just lying down that causes the problem. It is what condition your stomach is in when you lie down. If your stomach is still full, still actively digesting a heavy meal, and you lie flat, you are combining two problems at once. A stomach working hard to break down food, producing acid to do so, and a body position that makes it easy for that acid to travel upward. This combination is exactly why eating a large meal right before bed is one of the most common triggers for nighttime reflux, even in people who do not consider themselves to have serious digestive problems. So the question becomes, what should you actually eat before bed, if you eat anything at all, to reduce this problem instead of making it worse? This is where most advice online gets vague or exaggerated, promising instant miracle fixes. Let's be clear about what is realistic. There is no single food that will eliminate reflux permanently. But there are specific, well-documented choices that lower the acid burden on your stomach and reduce pressure on that lower esophageal sphincter. And when you apply them consistently, most people notice a real difference by the very next morning, after a single night of doing it correctly. That is not a miracle. That is simply giving your digestive system less work to do while gravity is against you. The first principle is timing. Clinical guidelines on reflux management consistently point to the same window: finishing your last substantial meal at least 3 hours before lying down. This is not an arbitrary number. 3 hours gives the stomach enough time to empty a significant portion of its contents before you go horizontal, which directly reduces the volume of material and acid available to reflux upward. If you eat a heavy dinner at 10 at night and go to bed at 10:30, your stomach is still actively working when you lie down, and you are setting yourself up for exactly the kind of nighttime burning we are talking about. The second principle is composition, meaning what kind of food you choose if you do need something in the evening, especially if you tend to feel hungry before bed. Foods that are lower in fat and lower in acidity ask less of your stomach. Fat slows gastric emptying, which means food sits in your stomach longer, which means more time for that door at the bottom of your esophagus to be tested by pressure and by the chance of relaxing at the wrong moment. A small, low-fat, mildly alkaline snack, something like a small portion of oatmeal made with water or low-fat milk, a banana, or a few slices of melon, asks much less of your digestive system than a plate of fried food, a rich pasta dish, or a large piece of fatty meat. These low-fat, low-acid choices do not sit in the stomach producing prolonged acid activity the way heavier meals do, and they do not carry the sharp acidity of citrus fruits or tomato-based foods that can directly irritate an esophagus that is already sensitive. Oatmeal in particular deserves attention here, not because it is magic, but because of simple, explainable mechanics. Oats absorb liquid and expand into a soft, low-fat, low-acid substance that is gentle on digestion. It provides a feeling of fullness without demanding heavy acid production from your stomach, and it does not linger the way fried or fatty foods do. Bananas offer something similar. They are low in acid, easy to digest, and many people report they help settle the stomach rather than agitate it. None of this means you should force yourself to eat oatmeal every night if you dislike it. The principle matters more than the specific food. Low fat, low acid, small portion, eaten early enough to allow real digestion time before you lie down. The third principle, and one that people underestimate constantly, is position. Even after you have addressed timing and food choice, the position you sleep in still matters enormously. Lying flat on your back gives acid a straight, level path to travel. Elevating the head of your bed, not just piling up pillows under your neck but actually raising the head of the mattress by around 6 to 8 inches using a wedge or risers under the bed frame, creates a gentle slope that works with gravity instead of against it. Multiple studies on nocturnal reflux have found that head-of-bed elevation meaningfully reduces both the frequency and duration of acid exposure in the esophagus during sleep. Sleeping on your left side has also been associated with less reflux than sleeping on your right side or on your back, likely because of how the stomach and the junction with the esophagus are positioned anatomically when you lie on that side. Put these three principles together and you have a coherent, evidence-based approach for a single night. Eat your last real meal at least 3 hours before bed. Choose a small low-fat, low-acid option if you need something closer to bedtime, and sleep with your upper body elevated, ideally on your left side. None of these steps individually sounds dramatic, but together they directly target the two mechanisms we discussed at the start. How much acid-producing work your stomach still has to do when you lie down, and how easily that acid can travel upward once you are horizontal. This is precisely why so many people notice a difference after just one night of applying these changes together, within that 8-hour window of sleep. You are not curing GERD in one night. You are removing several of the specific triggers that make nighttime symptoms worse, and the body responds to that quickly because the mechanism is mechanical and chemical, not something that requires weeks to shift. If this is starting to click for you, if you are recognizing your own dinner habits in what we just described, this is exactly the kind of channel that can help you understand what is happening in your body instead of guessing. If you want more breakdowns like this one, explained clearly and based on real clinical evidence rather than trends, subscribing and leaving a like helps this content reach more people who are dealing with the same nightly discomfort you might be dealing with right now. Let's talk about why this matters beyond just comfort, because nighttime reflux is not simply an inconvenience that ruins your sleep. When acid repeatedly reaches the esophagus while you are lying down for hours at a time, the tissue there is exposed far longer than it would be during a brief daytime episode. The esophagus does not have the same protective lining as the stomach. Your stomach is built to handle acid, your esophagus is not. Repeated, prolonged exposure night after night can lead to inflammation of the esophageal lining, a condition called esophagitis, and over years, in some people, it can contribute to changes in the esophageal tissue itself. This is part of why doctors take frequent nighttime reflux seriously rather than treating it as a minor annoyance to just tolerate. There is also the sleep disruption itself to consider, which has its own separate consequences. When reflux wakes you up, even if you do not fully register waking up, your sleep architecture is disturbed. You spend less time in the deep, restorative stages of sleep, and this fragmentation has been linked in research to daytime fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and even changes in appetite regulation the next day. Poor sleep can also make your perception of pain and discomfort more intense, which means a reflux episode after a night of fragmented sleep can feel worse than the same episode would after a full night of rest. It becomes a cycle. Reflux disrupts sleep, poor sleep increases sensitivity to discomfort, and that heightened sensitivity makes the next reflux episode feel even more disruptive. This is exactly why addressing the evening routine matters so much, because you are intervening at the point in the 24-hour cycle where the consequences compound the most. A daytime reflux episode is uncomfortable, but you are upright, you can address it, gravity is helping you, and it passes. A nighttime episode has hours to develop, hours to affect your sleep, and hours to expose the esophagus to acid before you even wake up enough to realize something is wrong. This is not about scaring you. It is about explaining clearly why the specific window before bed deserves more attention than most people give it. Let's go a bit deeper into why fat matters so much in this equation, because it is one of the most consistently underestimated factors. When you eat a meal high in fat, whether that is fried food, heavy cream sauces, fatty cuts of meat, or large amounts of cheese, your stomach has to work significantly harder and longer to break it down. Fat slows the rate at which your stomach empties its contents into the small intestine, a process called gastric emptying. The longer food sits in your stomach, the longer your stomach is producing acid to digest it, and the longer that lower esophageal sphincter is under pressure from a fuller stomach. Some research also suggests that high-fat meals can directly reduce the resting pressure of the lower esophageal sphincter itself, meaning the muscle becomes even less effective at staying closed exactly when there is more material available to reflux. It is a double effect. More acid, more volume, and a weaker barrier all happening at the same time, right before you lie down for 8 hours. This is not an argument that fat is inherently bad or that you need to eliminate it from your diet altogether. It is a matter of timing and proportion. A meal with moderate fat content eaten at lunch, when you will be upright and active for hours afterward, behaves very differently in your body than the same meal eaten late at night, right before you lie flat. Context changes the consequence. This is the kind of nuance that generic diet advice often misses, and it is exactly the kind of detail that actually changes outcomes when you apply it consistently. Caffeine and alcohol deserve a specific mention here as well, because both are common parts of many people's evening routines and both interact directly with the mechanism we have been describing. Caffeine has been shown in several studies to relax the lower esophageal sphincter, making it easier for acid to escape upward. Alcohol does something similar, and it also increases acid production in the stomach itself. A glass of wine with a late dinner, or a coffee after dinner to stay alert for a few more return hours, can undo much of the benefit you would otherwise get from choosing a lighter meal and eating it earlier. If nighttime reflux is a consistent problem for you, these two substances, specifically in the hours close to bedtime, are worth examining honestly, even if you are not ready to eliminate them from your life entirely. Something else worth mentioning, because it comes up constantly in questions from people dealing with reflux, is the difference between occasional heartburn and diagnosed GERD. Almost everyone experiences heartburn occasionally, after a particularly large or spicy meal, and that alone does not mean something is medically wrong. GERD is generally considered when these symptoms happen frequently, typically more than twice a week, over a sustained period, or when they are severe enough to interfere with daily life and sleep on a regular basis. If what we are describing tonight, the burning, the disrupted sleep, the discomfort that seems tied specifically to your evening habits, is happening consistently rather than occasionally, that is a signal worth discussing with a doctor rather than managing entirely on your own. Lifestyle changes like the ones we are covering here are genuinely effective and are recommended as a first-line approach by gastroenterologists, but they work best as part of an informed plan, especially if symptoms persist despite consistent effort. Now, thinking about all of this together, about how something as ordinary as your dinner routine connects directly to whether you sleep peacefully or wake up with a burning chest, it is worth pausing for a moment. Wherever you are watching this from tonight, whether you are dealing with this yourself or watching because someone you care about struggles with it every night, I would genuinely like to know. Leave a comment and tell me what city or country you are watching from right now. It helps me understand just how many people in how many different places are dealing with the exact same discomfort after dinner, and honestly, it is a reminder that this is a far more universal problem than most people realize. Let's bring this back to something practical you can apply starting tonight, because understanding the mechanism only matters if it translates into action. If dinner tonight is going to be later than usual, consider making it lighter and lower in fat than you normally would, specifically because you know it will be closer to bedtime. If you tend to want a snack right before sleep, reach for something small, low in fat, and low in acid like a portion of plain oatmeal, a banana, or a small serving of melon, rather than something rich, fried, spicy, or citrus-based. And when you do lie down, consider whether your current sleep position and the elevation of your head and upper body are working with gravity or against it. These three adjustments, made consistently, target the exact mechanisms we walk through. How much digestive work your stomach still has to do at bedtime, and how easily any acid that does escape can travel back up while you are lying flat for hours. It is also worth mentioning portion size specifically, separate from fat content, because even a low-fat meal eaten in a very large quantity late at night can stretch the stomach and increase pressure against that lower esophageal sphincter. A large volume of food, regardless of what it consists of, takes up physical space, and that physical fullness itself can be enough to push acid upward when you lie down, especially if the stomach is still quite full. This is part of why the advice from gastroenterologists so often includes not just what to eat, but how much, particularly for that last meal or snack of the day. Smaller portions in the evening, even of otherwise reflux-friendly foods, tend to produce better results than large portions of the same foods. Something worth clarifying, because it comes up often, is the role of chewing gum after meals. Some research has actually shown a modest benefit here, and the mechanism makes sense once you understand it. Chewing stimulates saliva production, and saliva is naturally alkaline. Swallowing more saliva after a meal can help neutralize small amounts of acid in the esophagus and may assist in clearing acid that has already made its way up, essentially acting as a mild buffer. This is not a replacement for the core principles we have discussed: timing, food choice, and sleep position, but it is a reasonable, low-effort addition for people looking for every possible advantage, particularly in the hour or so after a meal, well before actually lying down to sleep. Stress is another factor that connects to this whole picture, even though it is less visible than food choice or sleep position. Chronic stress has been associated with heightened sensitivity to acid in the esophagus, meaning that even similar levels of acid exposure can feel more intense and more uncomfortable when someone is under significant stress. Stress can also affect eating patterns themselves, leading to eating quickly, eating larger portions, or reaching for comfort foods that tend to be higher in fat, all of which circle back to the mechanisms we already discussed. This does not mean stress alone causes reflux, but it is a contributing factor that deserves acknowledgement, especially for people who notice their symptoms seem to intensify during particularly demanding or difficult periods in their lives. Let's also address something people frequently get wrong, which is assuming that avoiding food entirely before bed is always the safest choice. For some people, going to bed on a completely empty stomach after a long gap without eating can actually increase the concentration of acid in the stomach, since there is little food present to help buffer it, and this can sometimes worsen symptoms rather than help them. This is precisely why a small, well-chosen snack, rather than either a heavy meal or a completely empty stomach, tends to be the most balanced approach for many people dealing with nighttime reflux. It is not about eating nothing. It is about eating the right amount of the right kind of food at the right time, so your body is neither overworked nor left with unbuffered acid sitting in an empty stomach. If you have made it this far, you are clearly someone who wants to actually understand your body rather than just follow a list of rules without knowing why they work. That is exactly the kind of approach this channel is built around, and if you have not already subscribed, now is a good moment to do it, along with a like on this video, so that more people trying to understand their reflux, rather than just guessing at random remedies, can find content like this. Let's close by tying everything together clearly, because the goal tonight was never to give you a miracle food or a magic trick. The goal was to help you understand the actual mechanism behind nighttime heartburn, a lower esophageal sphincter that becomes less effective when your stomach is still full and working hard, combined with a horizontal position that removes gravity as your ally. Once you understand that mechanism, the solution becomes logical rather than mysterious. Finish your last substantial meal at least 3 hours before lying down. If you need something closer to bedtime, choose a small, low-fat, low-acid option like oatmeal, banana, or melon, rather than something rich, fried, or acidic. Elevate the head of your bed by several inches rather than relying only on extra pillows, and favor sleeping on your left side over your back or right side. Be mindful of caffeine and alcohol in the hours before sleep, and pay attention to portion size even when the food itself is a reasonable choice. None of these steps alone will fix chronic GERD permanently, and if your symptoms are frequent, severe, or persistent despite consistent effort, a conversation with a doctor is the right next step rather than continuing to manage everything alone. But applied together, consistently, these changes address the real, physical reasons your body reacts the way it does at night, and that is exactly why so many people notice a genuine difference by morning, after just one night of doing it right. There is a lot more to understand about how gastroesophageal reflux disease actually works, beyond just what happens in the hours before bed, and the more you understand the mechanisms behind your own body, the better equipped you are to manage this condition instead of just reacting to it. If tonight's explanation helped make sense of something you have been experiencing without quite understanding why, there is more waiting for you here on this channel, breaking down exactly how reflux works, one clear, evidence-based episode at a time.